All right, Alex. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to OneSoccer. I'm your host for today, Josh Deming, joined by my colleague Alex Gangue-Ruzic. Both of us have different backgrounds, but if you want to ask us about that, you can. But that's not the reason we are here today. We are here to discuss one of the dullest matches I've watched in quite some time, Alex. Guatemala, Canada, Game 2 in the group stage to a big 0-0 draw. A lot of takeaways from that match, a lot of frustration, a lot of question marks. I don't even know how to start breaking it down. And I know that there's going to be some people in the chat that are very frustrated. But first things first, come in, drop a like, say hello. Let us know what your biggest takeaway was from last night's match. And Alex, I'm going to throw it over to you just to see how you're feeling this morning. Or this afternoon, I guess, depending where you're watching from.
Yeah, I like the word dull. I think it was
Dull.
about as sharp as a very dull butter knife. It was just a game that kind of lacked a cutting edge from both sides. It was one where it was kind of destined to be 0-0. And I suppose if you're Canada, that sort of performance would have been fine if you were playing a top 10 team in the world. But when you're playing a Guatemala team that's ranked in the hundreds, this is a must-win game. You're at the Gold Cup. You do have, it feels like Canada had the better talent on the field, yet at the end of the day, really, there was just not much going on. And even in the end, Guatemala had the better chances to win. It's statistically reflected. The shots are about even, yet Guatemala's XG was about double of Canada's, which kind of sums up what kind of night it was on the ball and in the final third for Canada. I don't think it's been a while since we've seen them struggle that much in the final third. At least against Guadeloupe, they're generating chances, making things happen. It was just defensively that let them down. In this game, it was just kind of nothingness in the final third, and that's what that's what they're known for. It's a team that can score goals at the very least, right? So when that goes away, it shows you how dire it can get.
You said so much, and I think of one point, and I want to say it, and then another, and then another, and then another, and I don't even know where to start. But let's start on Guatemala. I agree, they were the better team. If they had a little bit more quality in that side, they would have took some of those chances, because there was point blank chances for them to definitely punish us. We got lucky. The only big chance I can really think of for Canada was Schaffelberg's one, and it was just a heavy touch that really took away the chance in itself. But I want to start off with my takeaway, because I think the first takeaway was hilarious for me. Not to toot my own horn, but Canada played 90 minutes plus and never looked like scoring. And Alex, the biggest question mark that a lot of people thought coming into this tournament was, where are their goals going to come from? Now, obviously, the two strikers that it looks to be going forward is Cavallini, Hoylett. Cavallini, despite being an unorthodox striker, can find the back of the net. After seeing this match, he really didn't look involved, did he? And does it put a question mark on the Cuba match and going forward? Because it kind of seems like with Herman, he's gone with the veterans. Like, the vets are given this tournament. This isn't for the youth. Do you think he's going to stick with Cavallini for the Cuba match and so on? And would you do it?
Yeah, I don't know. It feels like Cavallini. I think, again, you know what Cavallini is at this stage. He's a number 9. He disrupts. He makes things happen. And I think, to give Cavallini credit, I also think he didn't get much service, because I think the one time he got a good ball in the box, he laid it off for Junior Hoylett, and that was probably Canada's best chance of the game in my eyes. So I think it was something where Cavallini also wasn't given much to work with. But I don't know, I think it was painfully clear as the game went along. You're like, oh, you need a little pace up front. Let's stretch that Guatemalan back line. At least just open up any sort of space, right? I think Jacob Schaffelberg, for example, would have been perfect. That's the role he plays at Nashville. Second striker, run in behind, disrupt, cause problems. And that just kind of never came, right? I think Cavallini played pretty much the whole game up front. Brim came in, and even Brim's more of a Hoylett type at times, right? Where he likes to kind of drift around. Of course, Brim has the speed, but he wasn't asked to use it. He wasn't stretching those defenses, and it just kind of led to a lot of nothingness. So certainly Cavallini didn't help his cause, I'd say, just because sometimes as a striker, if you're struggling to get service, go get it yourself. But also just felt like nothing was being filtered towards Guatemala's box. Like, I'm sure I can check the touch stat, and I don't think it'll be very flattering for Canada, because it just felt like they didn't send up any sort of territory in that box.
No, they didn't. And I noticed, and that was like my second takeaway was they clearly tried to play to what we assume is their strength, which I would say is the flanks. I mean, Richie Larea did look dangerous. I thought he had a good game. I thought Miller at times looked like he could be dangerous, but it's that final ball. And like you said, like, if you get the right servers into the box for Cavallini, that's when he can become useful. A lot of the times, like he's not, like you said, going to create space for himself, really. Like come deep. That's just not the kind of striker he is. But you give him the right type of service, the right ball, he can finish, and he's shown that in the past. But what did you make of Larea and Miller's performances at wingback? I mean, I was skeptical to see like them at wingback because I just feel like, I mean, I don't mind it for Richie, but I think Miller would probably rather play a little bit further up the pitch. I did think he did good, but it's that final ball there, and they didn't seem like they were going to adjust. It was the same type of thing. Release the players with speed. They didn't really use and create anything through the middle. Is there anything that you would like to see and adjust for the Cuba match, or do you think, he's ride or die on this 3-5-2 hill?
When I liked Larea yesterday, I felt like he was kind of someone who you kind of slept on just because you're so used to him being consistent. And I thought he did well. It was just his final ball, really. But I guess that was indicative of the whole team. He made so many great runs and just would hit it a bit hard or get it over. I think, really, my issue wasn't so much with the wide areas because, again, the crossing quality was awful. I think they were saying something like 4 out of 21 crosses. Like that's just not good. I think really the surprise is they didn't get much more going in the middle because it felt like, again, if you're playing a 3-5-2, that's a 3-man midfield. That's a chance to play with a 10 to open up spaces between the lines. And I think, for example, you look at that midfield three to start, it was Fraser, Osorio, and Ali Ahmed. And then as the game went along, of course, Bombito slotted in. I'd expect a guy like Osorio, for example, to play between the lines. It's kind of what he was good at. And he kept dropping deep and kept trying to play almost as the 6, which is like, you're getting on the ball, but then you're turning and you're looking for the player that should be you. You're looking for, you're looking for that guy to be between the lines. And I just felt like because of that, it kind of forced them to play around the outside and on the periphery. And if you're a team like Guatemala, you're laughing. I think, it's something where you knew this was happening. I wrote it in my preview about 2 weeks ago that Guatemala is going to play a 4-4-2 or a 4-2-3-1, some sort of variance. They're going to sit, they're going to clog up the middle. They're going to want you to play in wide areas. And Canada kind of played into that game hand. And that game plan, I think it's something, if you want to open it up, you have to go in the middle, you have to penetrate in the middle, and they just weren't doing enough of it. So that kind of, their crossing wasn't great, but if you're playing into Guatemala's strengths, you kind of also did it to yourself in that regard.
Yeah, it was a little frustrating. I want to go back to that midfield, though, and see what your take is, and I just saw a comment. So if you guys are joining us in the chat, drop a like, get your guys' takeaway in from yesterday. I know that there's probably a lot of them, but one of my takeaways was definitely a question mark, and it's on Laturi. Now, I think it's strange that Fraser was left off this squad because he's not in good form. He's not really been with the national team for a bit. He comes back in as the late addition to replace Eustachio, and then he's given clearly like a role ahead of Victor Laturi. And my biggest takeaway from that first half, because he only lasted 45 minutes, is that he looked completely off pace. He looked very, very slow on the ball. I mean, the one time he was literally just kind of sitting there with the ball and he got it taken from him from behind. He just looked like someone who wasn't up to match form. And I think that's as simple it is, where when we go over to Bombito, who, again, Alex, I said to you last time, I would love to see him on the outside center back. I think that's where he looked comfortable, a little bit more natural for him. I thought he looked much better, but then when they took off Fraser, instead of putting in Laturi, they put on McGraw to add the McGraw and Vittoria issues again, and then put Bombito back up in the 6, where, again, he's just a very talented kid. It's hard to, I just don't think that's where he needs to be. I'm curious why Laturi keeps getting overlooked. This is someone who's been playing, who should have some rhythm. He's playing in a 3-5-2 system. That's basically what Ross County played with. Is there, like, are you scratching your head as much as I'm scratching mine? What was the reasoning for you that you would imagine that Fraser is getting the nod in front of Laturi? Is it just simply because he's been with his national team and has some reps under Herdman, or what's your thought there?
Yeah, I mean, that's as simple as the answer, right? I think why is that occurring? It's, again, familiarity, an understanding of the system, but also, I guess, as we've seen across the board, right, that familiarity is kind of almost hurting Canada right now, because right now the players who are struggling, say, it's not your Ali Ahmed, it's not your Moise Bombitos, it's not your guys who are new to this, it's the guys who have been there. It's your back three that has struggled immensely across the 2 games, which, other than Zach McGraw and 45 minutes of Moise Bombito, that's been, vets, Kamal Miller, Steven Vittoria, Milan Borjan. It's your midfielders that are struggling. So yeah, for Laturia, it makes no sense just because again, you add the form part. He's come off a good season. He's in form. May as well put him in there. There's the profile. Like he's someone who's good on the ball. It feels like Canada just needed someone. If he's dropping deep and then that pushes Osorio up the field, maybe get a bit more out of Osorio, who again was just dropping too much and expensing energy off the ball that he didn't need to. It is a head scratcher because again, what's the point of calling in Laturia and looking and because I don't mind the Bombito at 6 experiment, especially in the first game. Fine, you believe it. You threw it out there. You got, 80 minutes of sample size out of it? Great. You learned that Bombito is good on the ball and it's going to take work off the ball. That's not going to happen overnight. That's going to be a process to 6, 12 months, a year, 2 years. So I was surprised he went back to it because it's like, okay, you got to taste the Bombito experiment. Now do the Laturia experiment, right? You know what the Fraser experiment is. It's someone who he's been in Belgium for a couple of years now. He's 25. You know what he is at this stage. Laturia is far younger, and not saying that you need to play all the younger players, but again, you know what he is at this point, and I think it's just worrying if you're Canada that all the guys who they are, the guys who are reliable in qualifying, they've not been up to the pace, right? You've been playing this 3-5-2. And look, I have no problem with the 3-5-2 purely because it's kind of flown under the radar. John Herdman has played the same formation 6 games in a row. We're not talking about that because what in qualifying is every 20 minutes the formation was changing. He set an identity, and I think that'll pay off in the sense that we know the 3-5-2 will get a lot out of an Alphonso Davies in the right situation, Tajon Buchanan, Jonathan David, and Kyle Larin, etc. Now it's to find players who fit them and get the most out of them. And I think it is telling that over the last few games, some of these guys have struggled to adapt to this new formation, whereas guys like Bombito, Ahmed have slotted right in, and they do not look out of place.
And I think it's funny because in the last stream, a few comments were, we want some identity around this national team. Like they use Spain, for example, we're going to get a 4-3-3. And I mean, the Belgium was the 3-4-3. And like, you knew what the team was going to play. And like you just said, Alex, under the radar, but I think our identity is 3-5-2. And I agree. I don't hate it. But I like this comment here from Sean who said, what accounts for Herdman's stubbornness with the starting 11? Because I agree where I like the 3-5-2. And I think if you're going to get players used to this system, and whether it's the B squad and fighting for, opportunities to get into the A squad, or it's the A squad where you said these like the Larin David striker duo up front, or having Buchanan, Larea, Davies as your wing backs. Like I think it can fit. Johnson made a home at outside right center back. But when you look at the starting 11, and I don't know if it's, because this squad's a mix of players. You got like the veteran players and you got the kids. And I don't know if Herdman is doing enough to kind of switch it up. It looks like the same players that are given the chances, like your Hoylets, which I don't hate Hoylet's game. Obviously, I think he's a good player and deserves it. But it's him, it's Cavallini, it's Vittoria, it's Bordian. Like it's the same kind of players. It's Fraser coming in because he's been there. It is a bit of a stubbornness, I would say, to experiment. And then I think the perfect example was after bringing off Fraser, you move Bombito, who I thought looked very, very good on the outside right center back, looked a lot more natural, good on the ball. This could be a position he could grow in back into the 6, and then brought in McGraw, which I simply didn't understand. McGraw picked up a quick yellow. Fraser had a tough go. I don't know. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Alex. What would you have liked to see? You can be general about, like, even for the first game, second game, third game, whatever. But what would have your 3-5-2 would have looked like? How would you have liked to balance it out? And do you think there's any chance that Herdman may play with it a little bit for Cuba, because it's a must win now?
Yeah, look, I don't know how much we'll see change, so I can't pretend to say, oh, we're going to see 5-6 changes. I thought we're going to see wholesale changes after this game because, you're flying to Houston, it's hot, it's a muggy game, and you saw, one change, if I'm not mistaken, because all it took was the halftime sub to get it back to the exact same lineup from game 1. Yeah. So to pretend, I don't know, I wouldn't pretend to know that there's changes coming, but what I would see is just, look, you've committed to this 3-5-2. Again, you've chosen it to get the most out of Davies, Buchanan, etc. Then if I was a head coach, I want to look for players that best complement the likes of Davies and Buchanan, etc. Right? I'm looking, okay, how do you get the most out of Davies? You want him higher up the pitch in a wingback role. Well, you're going to need 3 quick center backs who can cover for him, say if he gets caught up, and you can play a little more aggressively and on the front foot. Because Canada center backs, the success they had in qualifying, Steven Vittoria, Daniil Henry, Kamal Miller, Alistair Johnson. It was when the game was in front of them. Like they were playing a lot lower. They were playing it deeper. It was a 4-4-2 is set up deep. And then at the World Cup, they started to play a bit more aggressively. Okay, you saw a bit of cracks. Now you played a bit more aggressively against the US. You got exposed a bit. Now it's 2 games we've been playing a bit aggressively. You keep getting exposed. I think that's telling you that, okay, maybe some of these center backs, they can't play that 3-5-2. So why not give shots to guys who can, right? Like Scott Kennedy. Yeah, he had a struggle against the US, but he's a guy who's quick. He can play in a high line. Why not try him and Bombito as the outside center backs? Test Guatemala, but can you run outside? Like, for example, Kamal Miller picked up a yellow 5 minutes into the game because he got caught for speed and had to grab a guy. Okay, can Scott Kennedy bring that little bit of speed you need to play a bit more aggressive? Can Zach McGraw play in the middle of those 3 just for a different look? Do you know what Vittoria is? Vittoria he's not changed over 2-3 years. He's a center back who, in the heart of a back 3, can do a lot of good things, especially, in the air and in terms of organizing it, but he's not someone who's going to give you the most speed. Can McGraw give you something different? It's basically looking at guys who can fit in with that 3-5-2, and it's as much imagining what it would look like with Davies or Buchanan or David or Laird. You know what those guys are, so find guys who can complement them. Again, going in the midfield, Victor Latourie is good on the ball. Canada needs someone who can get that ball from the defenders, penetrate those lines. Can Latourie be that guy? And then, because if not, what's the point of leaving him on the bench? Because you know what these guys bring, and I think it's something, especially the back 3, for example, they've struggled both games in this tournament. They struggled against the US, a lot of them. It's like, okay, why are you running it back? Because especially, again, the same back 3 at the World Cup, minus Alistair Johnson, you kind of know what they are. So why not just get a look at different profile? And at least if they failed, then okay, we tried it out. That's something that might need a little bit of work. But now at this point, you know what these guys are, and the fact that they're not fitting into the system, it is stubbornness.
I'm gonna ask a question in the chat. What back 3 would you guys like to see versus Cuba? I'm curious to see what you guys say. Let me know in the chat. Put your 3 players that you would like to see. Because Alex, I'm pretty sure it was either on Twitter or it was with you when I was talking about a back 3. But I mean, I was constantly saying like Bombito, I would like to see him there. Like outside right, it makes so much sense. He's got the profile. We know that. We saw it in the first half. Like you just mentioned, Scott Kennedy's a perfect one as well. And then that eliminates the option. And this isn't news to anybody, but don't you think it's probable that Herdman will do a little bit of rotation for Cuba? I feel like it's very rare in any tournament, World Cup, Gold Cup, Copa America, that you see the same, like a very similar squad for all 3 matches, right? Like you see rotation because the matches come so fast, and that was a hot match in Houston. Like to me, there's no way Vittoria starts this 3rd game. There's just not. So my thought process behind it was, clearly Herdman put the faith with the veteran players. There's no questioning that. So he looked at, on paper, probably the strongest 2 sides, or maybe they usually go with the strongest squad to open the match. Guadalupe was a surprise package. They look very good. And then Guatemala, I would say, is the strongest side against Cuba. So he probably ran the same best 11 to Herdman's eyes for the second match. But I don't think you can do that again, man. Like not in this heat, not in this quick turnaround. They're gonna have to do rotation, and that makes me think like Vittoria can't go again. So I would say it's probably going to be McGraw in the middle, just for that reason. Bombito really is your only outside, unless he plays Bombito as a 6th, then maybe we see Zator. I don't know. I'm going to get your thought in a sec. And then Kennedy has to be the other option. Like that's the back 3 that I would run. I would go McGraw, Bombito, and Kennedy with Latourie in the 6th, but I could see Herdman maybe not trusting Latourie clearly, and then putting Bombito back in the 6th, and then pulling Zator. Which one do you think is more likely out of those 2 scenarios?
I mean, you see, I'm looking right now because I'm out of like pure curiosity, right? Like, What did John Herdman do at the last Gold Cup? Because the World Cup isn't a fair sample size because they were eliminated by the 3rd game, right? So they kind of rotated a bit more.
That's fair.
In the 3rd game. And I'm looking, for example, in back 3, they ran Johnston, Vittoria, Miller in 2 of the 3 games. And then the only change they made to their backline across the entire group stage was Daniil Henry came in for the middle game. So if we're going based on that, we're not seeing any rotation. It's something where... Do
you think Vittoria can do these 3 games, though? Like, are you... Yeah?
He did it at the World Cup on the exact same turnaround. So I think it's something where Herdman has made his hand very clear. 2021 Gold Cup, 2023 World Cup, or 2022 World Cup, pardon me. that's 2 tournaments in a row, especially the 22 World Cup. He had no excuse to, like no reason to. They were eliminated by the third game. He could have tried out Alphonso Davies at center back for all he wanted to. That wasn't going to
Yeah.
change the result. So I think he's played his hand very clear that I think we'll see Miller. We'll see Miller and Vittoria. It's really who's going to join them. Is it going to be Zator, Bombito? Is it going to be McGraw? But based on past history, Vittoria and Miller may as well put them in pen right now.
It's because depending on that, and that's a good stat. Because I mean, I didn't know. I mean, that's interesting. I just know that there is some rotation depending on the squad. You usually see a lot of matches, but because whoever that third player will be in the back line is going to determine who the 6 is, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if he doesn't trust Laturi. I feel like he'd probably put Bombito there over Fraser after that performance, which means then someone else, probably McGraw, will get the start at the outside right, and we're running into the same problems we just saw for 2 straight matches, right? Like, I don't know if I would put Bombito outside right in ink, and if you want to run Vittoria Miller, so be it. I can live with that back 3. And then it has to, because you have 2 options down for the 6. It's Laturi or Fraser, and from what I saw, it has to be Laturi. And I'm just confused on what he's going to do, because I think more than likely we're going to see Bombito at the 6 and then McGraw, and that's the same back 3. Like, I just feel like I could almost put a little money on it right now.
Well, now it's like interesting because you're playing a Cuba team that it's pretty much it's very simple, right? Like it's I think it's because Guatemala has 4. Yeah, Cuba's eliminated, right? Because they're 0 points and then 2 teams with 4, so they can't catch them. You're playing an already eliminated Cuba team, kind of has nothing to play for, kind of just got pummeled by Guadeloupe 4-1. You're going to need to hold a lot of the ball. You're going to want ball dominant players. So like personally, what I'd want to see again, it's guys who can hold the ball. It's Zator, for example, play him in that right center back. You've seen it in the CPL in Poland. He's comfortable playing as a right back, a right center back. That's someone who's comfortable on the ball. You can, on that left side, Kamal Miller's comfortable on the ball, so I wouldn't hate that in that regard. Scott Kennedy, Moise Bombito on the outside of a left. But yeah, in terms of that 6, you want guys comfortable on the ball. Again, Victor Laturi, that's what he does. He's a ball playing, number 6 who's got some destroying progress qualities, as we like to say. So yeah, I'd say that Laturi is your must start at the 6 and put Bombito back there, but that remains to be seen.
Benedict says Laturi plays a riot from the CPL. So Benedict, would this be your back? I'm gonna try to. So at the 6, we have Laturi, McGraw in the middle, Bombito on the outside left, Zator on the outside right. Get the 2 CPL guys in there. Let me know what you do, Benedict. But yeah, I mean, it's a question mark, and it's an easy question mark for the fans to pick up on as well. When I shared the starting 11, and it's funny, Alex. This is we have a group chat with Armin and Taylor, and we put a tweet up it was the Johnson tweet. So we did it, or the message. We did it at the exact same time, and then I shared very quickly the starting 11 as I do, and you do it as well. We just predict what we think we're gonna see, and as soon as I tweeted mine out, the first thing that popped up was yours, and we predicted how it was going to play, and we were pretty happy there. But it's a question mark because the fans didn't like it. And as soon as I shared that, I got a lot of people replying, "Where's Dane St. Clair?" Because if Dane St. Clair wasn't going to start this match, he wasn't going to start. Where's Laturi? Like the fans were not happy. Right before the kickoff even started, they looked at the starting 11. We're like, this isn't what we want to see. We want to see other guys give an opportunity. And then when it doesn't work out, it seems like it's a too obvious of a point to take a look at, the fact that the starting 11, the personnel doesn't work out. But for me, that's one of the biggest things I'm looking at. Is just like, and I said it after the very first match, a few tactical changes, which is with players, could probably open some things up and change. But right now, you're starting to convince me that I think we're going to see pretty much the exact same squad. Maybe one change that will determine where Bombito will play. But it's kind of frustrating. I don't know.
It is frustrating because, again, like at this point, you know what these guys are, and look, if they've gotten 6 points from 6, that's fine. You've obviously rolled the dice and you've gone with it, and if it works, it works, right? You're never going to fault a winning lineup, but it is something where, again, if you're going to be putting out lineups and you're not winning, especially again when you're not putting guys in straightforward positions, right? Like McGraw outside of a back 3, Bombito is a 6, and you're not winning, then all of a sudden it's like it opens you up to, okay, like what's going on here. experimentation will always fall flat on your face if you're not getting the results. And World Cup qualifying, you get the results. You could play anyone, anywhere, and it doesn't matter, right? Because you're winning. It's a game of that, and it's like, at least, again, as well, the part again, that the fact that the veterans are struggling, and I think we'll see them run it back. Like, again, like, it'll be interesting to see, because Steven Vittoria and Kamal Miller are both on yellow cards, and we have to remember that there's suspensions at play. I don't think they wipe until, I don't know how it works for the Gold Cup. Might be semifinals. They don't wipe too. You can't tell me, like, Steven Vittoria could have easily got that second yellow yesterday and be suspended. Kamal Miller, him and Kamal Miller have been walking that tightrope all, through the first two games. You can't tell me that they're not going to be a suspension risk in this game. There's just so many questions to have about the defensive rotations. And I mean, to kind of add to a point too that I saw in the chat, of course, I mean, we're saying, okay, maybe we're just sitting here talking about a Canadian team that isn't quite at the level, and that's potential reality based on what we've seen, but also we haven't seen enough of the other guys to get to that conclusion. Some of these guys that we've seen are struggling to keep up with the pace, but we haven't seen Scott Kennedy this tournament. We haven't seen what Dominic Sator can do for more than 1 minute in a game where it's just throw an extra center back on and get behind the ball. We haven't seen what Victor Laturi can do. So at least, at this point, if we see all those guys again, if it's something where if they're terrible and they're not up to the level, then okay, we'll hold our hands up and be like, okay, we were wrong. That happens at soccer. Sometimes you think things and they're not right. But at this point, the fact that we've seen the same thing over and over again, it adds to your frustration, because it's like, what are you doing here, right? It gives that vibe of like knocking your head against the door. It's like, what are we doing here? And I don't know, just the first two games, you're kind of, that energy is there. And it's like, again, it's something where if you're full, if you're going in full in on the kids and they're not good enough, at least the kids will learn, right? Because I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, who's going to be learning from this? Ali Ahmed and Moise Bombito, yes, but again, how much is someone like Steven Vittoria going to be learning? How much is Milan Borjan going to be learning from this?
Yeah, I mean, and it's frustrating. And when I saw the roster get released and I saw Borjan on there, I think I told this to you, Alex. I said there's absolutely no shot that Dane St. Clair plays a minute of this tournament. And some people, I remember being like surprised. They're like, well, no, like they'll probably rotate it. And I just didn't think so. I said, if Borjan's called in, then it's his. And Borjan got a clean sheet. I'm not picking on Borjan for last night's match. I just meant, like, when you took a look at what Herdman, because I don't know if it's a weakness for Herdman, but it's definitely, he's got a soft spot for specific players. We saw it throughout qualifying. Players who, despite not being on form, always called in. And then when other players aren't there, they can sometimes be relied on. And I would probably throw Cavallini and Borjan right now into that mix. So it wasn't a surprise, but then I didn't realize it would fall, like, because a keeper's different than the outside players, like the outfield players. And when he didn't get the opportunity to start, then it's like, fine, so be it. But now we're seeing it through all the youngsters that we brought in. And that's where it's starting to bug a little bit of the fans. But we've been a little bit negative, and we might continue to be negative throughout the stream. But I do want to focus a little bit on the positive, and that is the fact that the path that we could end up in is technically the easier path, I would say, because hypothetically, if we finished first, we would take on one of the US or Jamaica, probably Jamaica, depending if they can turn over that goal difference. And then we would probably have to take on Mexico. Very tough route to the finals. If we end up beating Cuba, not by too much, but say we win 1 or 2-0, and we end up in second, then we will play again, probably right now looks like the US, which I would say on paper is the weaker side against Jamaica. At least they have less, high profile talent. And then we'd obviously avoid Mexico to go to the finals. So yeah, there's a little bit of too poor, but it's hard to look at the bright side when the two performances were so bad, you know what I mean? But like, if they can figure it out in this Cuba match, make a couple tweaks and this team can get rolling, there is a path there, Alex, that we could turn this tournament around, no?
I mean, there absolutely is. I mean, that's the thing. The sky is far from down. Again, it's 2 draws in 2 games. It's not terrible results. The performances, we've discussed about the performances. But I guess the frustration is for this Gold Cup is, again, it's as much as seeing these young players win, right? Or not win. So these young players see the field, and then winning is a bonus. Because like we mentioned at the Nations League is different because you want that core group of Alphonso Davies, Tejan Buchanan, Stefan Eustachio, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin to win together. because that helps. It builds chemistry, that builds just, that foundation, so that say in 2-3 years time, those are the guys you can guarantee in pen, injuries aside, will be at that next World Cup. You want that winning experience for them, where it's like, tangibly, I can't sit here and predict, okay, Milan Borjan's going to be at the next World Cup, Steven Vittoria is going to be at the next World Cup, Lucas Cavallini is going to be at the next World Cup, etc. For them, yeah, winning would be great. It would be, especially a guy like Borjan, Hutchinson, if he was here. These guys deserve a chance to win, no doubt. But it's also something where you're in a mode where you need to plan for the future. And I think it's something where, look, it'd be great if guys like Laturi could win, right? Guys like who have younger guys, if Ali Ahmed could get a taste of winning with Canada. But to do that, also you'd want to see them earn their licks, right? The guys as well during qualifying, we have to remember that, guys like Borjan and Cavallini were there for some of the darkest days of Canada, and that's why they were so keen qualifying, because they could kind of take these youngsters aside and be like, look, we came from the dark times. Like, just remember to stay grounded, to stay on your feet. Now that this next cycle is on, you need some of those young guys to earn those licks, right? You need those young guys to go out there. And well, I think now what this means, the way the tournament has gone, is now that you're kind of putting all your eggs in the winning basket, and that's kind of not a safe strategy, because if you had the first two games or anything to go by, yeah, they'll beat Cuba and they'll advance to the next round. But the U.S., that's going to be a tough game. Jamaica, they'll steamroll you, especially if you keep defending the way you have. That Damari Gray he'll be laughing. He'll score a hat trick with his eyes closed. So it's something where it's like really going all in on winning at this point. It's just like, at least if you were doing so with the kids, you take that. Again, if some of these guys get turnstile, they get exposed. Okay, you earned your hard knocks. We'll see you in September for some friendlies. We'll hopefully see you at the Gold Cup in 25. But again, with these veterans, it's something where it's like, if you go all in on winning and they fall flat, it's kind of like, okay, then what was the point of these 3, 4, 5 games of this tournament? And that's just the frustrating part of all this, that obviously we're struggling to put together.
I gotta say, we've been talking. This is our second stream now. I mean, we've done a couple like leading up to the Gold Cup, and that was what we basically were excited for, Alex. When you and I did the big preview, it's like, I know that there's some disappointed fans to not see Davies, Buchanan, but we were saying there's a lot of talent here. There's a lot of young talent that could help mold the future of what this team could look like. And we're talking about Bombito, Laturi, maybe Brim. I mean, Jay Nelson got called in late, which is a good addition. Not your Liam Fraser's, Borjans, etc. But I think the disheartening part for me is the fact that, like you said, we did seem like Herman's going all in, and his all in is playing the veteran players. But then to see two performances the way that we are right now, it puts Herman in such a sticky situation, because it's like, well, do I change for the last match against Cuba and put in the kids and risk not going through and risk getting criticized even more, or do I stick to my guns and play these guys and hoping that they can get a result against Cuba? But despite this, like, this is on paper the weakest group. Like, everyone thought Canada was going to steamroll everybody 3-0-0, or this was a bust of a group. We've already drew the first two matches, and we have to get a result on Cuba just to finish second, basically. It's tricky, and it doesn't make me feel very comfortable going into whatever the quarterfinal match is going to be against the US or Jamaica, especially with the exposed back line, depending on who it is. There's so much speed in both sides, and I don't know how he's going to put together this Cuba side. But Alex, we're going to play the game that we always do. We're going to try to build a starting 11. We'll go into the chat here a little bit. I did see a question here before we get into building our starting 11, guys. So we'll use your guys' help in the chat. I think we'll probably end up coming up with a team that looks very different than what Herman will do. But we do got a question here. Hello, Josh and Alex. Any thoughts on Hebert, Chouanier, and Corbiano missing out on the Gold Cup squad? I can add Ugbo there. I'll give my quick opinion before I go set up the starting 11. But Corbiano, I don't personally think he deserved a call up. He's had a very, very tough season. He's had tough few seasons. He's been with multiple clubs in those seasons. I think he needs to focus on finding a league, finding a club, and I would ideally like him see him just get a permanent move away. He's not good enough right now, and probably not good enough in the next couple of years to play for Wolves, in my honest opinion. I don't see the development right now. I think he should find a club that trusts him, that wants to bring him, that wants to develop him, give him reps, give him opportunities, and then hopefully he can grow and get back to the player that we thought he could be. So I don't think he was deserving of a call-up, Ugbo, again, I would just say he probably is trying to find out a transfer. If you guys saw some latest news, it looks like he might be heading back. I said England, so I'm sorry to Adam Jenkins. It is Wales, heading back. I meant heading back to the championship, but Cardiff City have been linked with him. I think that would be a good move for him to, find a move away this summer. And that's some of the issues. Some players want the summer off. They want to find transfers. And it's so important to someone like Ike Upo, who had a very frustrating season, similar to Corbiano. So I'd kind of tie them in the same category. Hebert and Chouanier, I personally would have put in this squad, especially Chouanier. We're talking about this midfield struggling. This could be a perfect addition. Someone who's versatile, can play at right wing back, left wing back, center mid, cam. Like, he's an all-star right now. He's about to go take on Arsenal. It's very mind-blowing that he's not in this squad. Is one of the most. I thought he was not only going to feature, like I said, I thought he was going to be a big part of this Gold Cup squad. And I think Hebert could have done a good role as well. I think he could have featured in the back three. He could feature in the back four. He's been playing left back right now. Adakubi dropped out. That's not that he would play wing back, but it was a bit of a head scratcher for me. So Alex, I don't know if you want to add anything to those thoughts there, but yeah, I mean, I would have liked to see Hebert and Chouanier in the squad, and I understand why Corbiano and Ugbo weren't there.
Yeah, I mean, Corbiano, look, he just needs some stability at the club level. Ugbo, I would have argued a bit more for, especially now after we've seen the first two games. It's something where for him, match fitness isn't missing out on how would I say? Like, for him, he could use this, right? Like, just running around, getting some fitness. He'd offer you a bit of something different. It's something where I guess if it really does come down to club situation, fair enough. You do want that stability. The Hebert one is a big question mark, especially if you're seeing Zach McGraw on the outside of a back three. And again, that's no, disrespect, say, to a Zach McGraw, but this is someone who's done very well this year for Portland in the heart of a back four, being that dominant aerial presence. The best way to replicate that's in the middle of a back three. And then we've just seen that some of the running demands, some of the demands on the ball haven't suited McGraw. And that's just unfair to him, because he's been asked to, slot in at right center back in this very high speed, up tempo, transitional system. And he's, it's been tough for him. Whereas a guy like Hebert, he's used to kind of that rock and roll soccer with St. Louis. He's familiar. He's had that camp with Canada. So he could slot right into the outside of a back three. So that one's surprising. And then the last one for Chouanier. Yeah, that one, it's really unfortunate, because obviously it was reported out of Montreal yesterday that when Eustachio and Adakubi went down injured, Canada called Montreal right away, like, look, can we get Mathieu Chouanier? And he was injured. But it shouldn't have come down to that. He should have been on the original roster. You shouldn't be calling him last minute, the hey, you up? No, it should you should have called. You should have called a week before to make plans. You should not be making last minute plans to call in Mathieu Chouanier. So that one is just surprising, especially in midfield again, where you need a bit of spark, a bit of dynamic nature. Like, what do we know about Mathieu Chouanier? He can run all day. He can bring you a bit of quality on the ball. He can play between those lines, and those are just three things that you're almost missing. Where it's been sluggish, it's been slow. You're lacking that energy. You're lacking that spark on the ball that he can bring.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, with absolutely no disrespect to Watherspoon, but that would have been the obvious. I would have left him off for. There's no need really for Watherspoon to be here, unless no disrespect to Watherspoon. It just. Chouanier, this is a guy who is much younger, has a huge ceiling, and can play multiple roles. And you missed out on him, so it sucks. It's frustrating, but it kind of goes back to this point I'm seeing right here. It says Canada is not playing their best 7 players. Why are people expecting so much from these young guys? Well, that's the thing, is like what we're seeing is not these young guys. Like Alex mentioned earlier, we're not playing Russell Rowe, we're not playing Brim, we're not playing Laturi, we're not playing all these young guys and seeing what they can do in a tournament. And if they're falling flat, then we don't expect so much from the young guys. They're playing guys who are a part of the A squad. Your Vittorias, your Millers, your Borians, your Lareyas. Cavallini's been with this program for a very long time. We're playing guys who should be expected to see more out of them. And I know, Alex, you and I both mentioned it as well with, our thoughts from matches, is the vets aren't doing it really. If the vets aren't doing it, then why not give the kids a rep? But so, I mean, I still think this group is better than what we've seen so far. I still think it's just like that one thing is not clicking for them to get results, but they were 2 very disheartening matches we've seen so far. And like we keep saying, they play anywhere near that level against Jamaica or Mexico or USA, they're going to be in big trouble. But we're not expecting much from the kids, because the kids aren't playing. That's just as simple as that. But Alex, let's have some fun. Chat, let's have some fun. Is there any way we see a 4-4-2, Alex, or are we not even going to bother? It's 3-5-2. Let's try to put the pieces together.
Yeah, let's do it. And let's build a 3-5-2 that can, maybe some of the players could suit the system a bit more, I suppose, right?
All right, 3-5-2 because we're gonna build it. Put in the chat, guys, some players you'd like to see. You can put the whole squad if you want. I'll bring a couple up, but we'll go position at a time. And I'm not even gonna bother putting Sinclair here. There's no point. There's no point. Borian is going to.
But
start.
Are we building our predicted 11? Or are we building our? Fold this in a letter, send it to Houston, and
I think
put your hands together, kind of lineup.
I think we should build kind of what we expect, but like say a position was a little bit close, you know what I mean? Then we would do a little bit with what we want. I don't think there's even a 1% chance that Dane Sinclair starts, you know what I mean? But I think there could be a chance, maybe we see maybe a Zator or I don't know if we'd see a Laturi, but we could see a Frazier, you know what I mean? And then kind of go with our gut. But in between the sticks, there's not even a point. You guys in the chat get it. Alex and I would like to see Dane Sinclair. It's not going to happen. So we're going to put Borian in net. So let's address the back three, Alex. Let's start from left to right, just because I'm curious to see where you're going to go. Are you going to go with Miller, Kennedy? Would you throw Bombito over and open up a spot for Zator? What would you like to see for the outside left center back?
Outside left, I'd like to see Kennedy get some fresh legs, get some of that speed back there. But I mean, again, like we say, what do we expect? Miller, Vittoria, and take your pick. But I'd throw in Kennedy there.
I agree, and I don't think that's as unlikely, for example, seeing St. Clair than Borian. You know what I mean? Herdman has shown trust in Kennedy. He just did it in the last window in the Nations League final. He has played Kennedy in roles. He clearly favors Miller more. I don't think there's getting around that. That's why we were so disappointed not to see Cornelius, because it just would add a different player in there. But I don't think it's completely unrealistic to think that Kennedy will start, but we'll put him in there. So your central center back, I'd go McGraw over Vittoria just because of the legs on Vittoria.
The yellow card concern.
The yellow card
suspended for a potential quarterfinal.
They both had yellows though, right?
Miller, McGraw, or
does Vittoria?
Vittoria has one for sure.
Yeah.
I think, did McGraw not get one yesterday?
Yeah.
He should have got one. He absolutely folded a guy, but the ref was a bit lenient with some of those tackles at the end.
I do think they both have yellows. Correct me, Chad, if we're wrong. But
Schaffelberg got a yellow. Bombito got a yellow. McGraw got a yellow. Okay, it was 60th minute.
Oh, and now something else I was going to tell you quickly before I forget. I liked that little combination right here. I don't know why I have ZBG over there, but Ahmed, Bombito, and Miller are in Larea. I thought the best chances Canada had, the best patterns of play, the execution, releasing Larea, and Bombito made quite a few runs coming from the outside right center back. I don't know if you kind of caught that little try.
Very active going forward. He gets up the field. He's got a good motor on him. I was impressed. I was impressed with his ability to get up and down.
Yeah, but I noticed that little triangle, and I would like to keep that. So, I mean, we'll go over to. Sorry, wait. Did we say McGraw or Vittoria?
Let's leave McGraw in the middle of the back three. Look, I'd like to see him a bit more there. We saw a grand total of 10 minutes there in the second half when he came on and he looked comfortable there. I think it's something where let him try that role. He looks so uncomfortable outside right. If Vittoria, don't want to risk the yellow or the fatigue, then Kennedy, McGraw, Bombito gets you a bit more of that speed that you've been lacking, but also that presence in the middle aerially. And then you can continue that Ahmed, Larea, Bombito triangle that kind of did some nice things. There's something building there.
And that's what you've got to grasp on something. That's something that I just noticed right away. I love the fact that Bombito coming from outside right center back. We kind of see Johnson do that every once in a while, but there's a good understanding right now between Larea and Ahmed, and then getting an intelligent player like Bombito who's got athleticism, can get up the pitch. I loved it. Your outside right center back is making overlapping runs, getting into dangerous areas. Yes, the final ball wasn't there, but I 100% agree that there is something there that if Canada was going to create something, I figured it was going to come from those three, which is why I was a little annoyed when Bombito kind of left that, because then that triangle wasn't really there anymore. Bombito had a lot more responsibilities kind of covering the 6 area, which spread across the park. So, and then McGraw, wasn't going to do that. He was not going to go up the pitch that way. He would get caught and it would be ugly in transition. So All right, I like that. Bombito, McGraw, Kennedy. And also, just for everyone to understand as well, I do like, potentially, I would like to see a back four that would have McGraw and Kennedy. I do think that those two would complement each other very well. McGraw clearly much more comfortable playing in a back four. And then you have someone with the pace of Kennedy who can also play in a back four, but regardless, might not happen. Anyways.
Kennedy and Bombito wouldn't look terrible either.
That, as I agree. I know. And that's why, like, I'm looking at this back three. I'm like, this makes a lot more sense. Like, speed.
Yeah, it's again, like you look at what you saw, right? Like, again, McGraw on the outside right. It was just, again, you almost feel bad for the guy because he's just not built there. Like, he's a hefty, like, he's a guy you do not want to go in an aerial duel with. He's a guy you want to keep in the middle dominating. And then, you're putting him outside right against some of these fast Concacaf fours, or just putting him in the turnstile, right? Like, I almost feel bad just because he's not built. And it's, again, it's like you want to put players in positions to succeed. And it just did not feel like it was the case.
I agree. And that's why I just kept, like, we've had this conversation before, Alex. Like, it's just like, little moves to put players in their proper positions. Who knows how that'll work out. But all right, so this is a big question then. If we're putting Bombito on the outside right at the 6, like, it has to be one of Laturi or Frazier. I mean, my gut would tell me he would maybe give Frazier another go, but do you think Herman has got it in him to be like, you know what? I need Bombito outside right. I don't like the McGraw, Vittori in the back 3. Frazier did not look up to pace. Are we going to go with Laturi? Do you think there's even is there a sliver? Is there a sliver of a chance, or do you think it's about as likely as St. Clair starting?
Surely Laturi has to, right? Again, it's like we say, you're playing an eliminated Cuba team and you need to score goals against, right? Like, you'd put the guy like Laturi, who's more of a ball dominant number 6, right? Like, I'm not like saying anything outrageous by suggesting that, because Laturi is good on the ball. He's known for his on-ball qualities. You've seen the clips. You watch him play Ross County. He's a 6 who can whip out roulettes and nutmeg. Like, he's a guy who's good on the ball, and you need a guy on the ball. I don't know. I would like to see a Laturi, especially again, Liam Fraser. We know he can hit that perfect ball over the top. He can hit that long ball, but as we saw at times yesterday, he can almost be overcompensating for that long ball. He's always looking for it, and a guy like Laturi can just combine, get on the ball. Like, I don't know, it's something where it would make sense tactically. Then it comes down to, is Laturi trusted? And I think it's something where between the 6 chances he's had to see the field, he's not seen it once. You do wonder, what more does he have to do to earn that trust? I
mean, and that's why in the back of my head, I'm like, I almost don't think there's a shot like that Laturi's going to start at this point. Not even getting a second. Haven't even made his Canada debut yet. Will we get the start for it? I find it unlikely, but I mean, I agree. Frazier is an excellent passer of the ball. I don't think we can deny that. We've seen so many incredible long balls. The goal for Jonathan David clearly sticks out, but it just looks off the pace. He doesn't look up to match speed, especially at this level right now. It's just coming from a frustrating season, and I just feel like Laturi would be the better option there. So, I mean, we're going to put him there, Alex, because that's kind of the point of this, this stream. It's the free Laturi stream. So there we are. The other two.
Scream it from the rooftops.
Yeah, scream it from the rooftops. The other two is not, well, Ahmed's not a debate. I'm not even going to ask you because he's the best player Canada's had this tournament so far. The other, like, kind of your other 8, 10, Osorio, Hoylett, I'd have Hoylett down here. Probably would he play as, I mean, would you like to see your Hoylett there and then or even Osorio, then put your Schaffelberg up with Cavallini, or do you think that's, again, we're going a little bit realistic. So do you think there's a chance Herman won't play Osorio?
I'd say, yeah. Look, Osorio, he struggled a bit on the ball more than I'm used to seeing, because when Osorio's at his best, he's very ball dominant. He's finding space between the lines, and he just wasn't doing either of those things. So maybe it looks something where he's a bit fatigued. He's come back from that, knee injury, and he's played pretty much like he's played a good amount across the last few weeks. So maybe it's something where he just needs a bit of a rest and reset, kind of off the bench, especially after going back-to-back starts. So. And Hoylett's looked liveliest of anyone in the attack between the lines, right? He looks so good between the lines. You're just not getting him the ball enough. So, yeah, I think it would make sense to drop Hoylett and free up a new option up front. I'd also argue you could put Jaden Nelson in that role, but I think the fact we haven't seen him off the bench at all in these 2 games, I think Hoylett makes the most sense. Yeah,
we're trying to make it realistic, but I agree. I think at times, and I mentioned this after the first match, that like Hoylett looked at times like he could take over a game. And I think that's something you need in a team that is clearly struggling to create anything. And Osorio, I would kind of put him not quite in that Frazier, not up to like the mark category, but Hoylett, I think if you drop him in there, give him a little bit of space, let him wander, he could create something. I feel much more confident that he could create something right now than even a Jaden Nelson who, has not been used to this type of environment yet, or even Azorio. So I agree. I like that. And that'll give us a little bit of a different option up front. And I think I know where you're going to go. Outside left wing back. It's an interesting one because I do think Liam Miller's had a good tournament so far. I think he's used his pace well. He's gotten to dangerous. He's not afraid to dribble past players, use his skills. It's just that final ball. It's just not there. Whether he takes it with his right, with his left, he's been overhitting. And he knows that too. Like you can see it on his face. He gets in good positions and he whips in a ball. And he's like, oh man, like it's just off. But like, I like that he's taking on players, like he's trying to create something. It's just, I don't know who else really to play there. I wouldn't want to go with Schaffelberg on the outside left. I don't think that's going to get the best out of him. And I wanted to give Liam Miller credit. I love his defensive efforts as well. He's got the speed. He tracked back well. He's been making tackles. Like he's doing the best he can being a winger stuck in a left wing back position. So what did you make of his game? Is there any other insights you saw? Because that's basically what I saw. Good, did well to track back, got in good areas. Final ball wasn't there.
Yeah, I think what you can't fault with Miller is that he wants to try things. He's always kind of been like that. He wants to take guys on. It's just for Canada, you haven't seen that end product, right? He's still looking for that first goal, which is wild to think given, he's already made 20 plus caps. He runs at guys. He's got speed. It's really, can you get that final ball out of him? And I think, honestly, why not keep him trying? Because I think right now for Canada, it's like with the Hoylett, right? The Hoylett situation. You want as many guys who are willing to try things right now and make things happen. And I just think there's just not a lot of options either, right? Like if you're saying, okay, Miller needs a rest, he needs out, who are you putting, right? Like Richie Larea can play there, but I like him on the right. Like Larea, the way he is, he gets to, like the way his hips get positioned on the left, he always just naturally looks too inside, and then he just drifts and he kind of like takes away one of his best attributes, which is to stretch the field. Broguiard could maybe start there. I don't know how he'd look on the left, but I think based on what we've seen with Miller, he looks comfortable kind of cutting inside, but also going to his left. It's something where, can that final ball come? That's, it's a very big hypothetical, but I'll always take players that are trying things and trying to make things happen.
He can hit it from distance. If you've seen when he was like in good form with Basel, he can definitely hit it from distance. So, like I said, like we aren't playing great. There's no debating that, but if it can just click a little bit, like, and I'm looking at that triangle, which is why I agree. I don't want to see Larea swap sides to the right. Larea, Bombito, Ahmed, I think something's there, especially against a Cuba. If you can get that chemistry together, release Richie, and let's not kid ourselves. He was creating chances. Like he was getting into spaces.
Very good yesterday.
And it's not that the ball was poor, but, and this is where I'm going to go to next, Alex. It's not that the ball was poor, but people undervalue dummy runs. And when you're talking about someone like a Jacob Schaffelberg getting into space, bringing defenders with him, maybe freeing up a Cavallini, because like it just seemed like every time the ball went in from Larea, maybe Hoylett wasn't doing enough because he wants to drop a little bit deeper. He wasn't making those type of runs that a natural striker might have made, or someone who can run like a Jacob Schaffelberg. So do you kind of get what I'm saying there? Do you think that if the distribution is there with two strikers that are working in tandem to create space for one another, we can maybe get another result? Because I'm not as confident through the middle, but I think if you have a Richie Larea and Miller doing what they're doing as wing backs, you put Hoylett into the middle, he can create some space for there, and then you have a Jacob Schaffelberg just running at the defenders, trying to pull them out and create space for a Lucas Cavallini. Do you think that Cava Schaffelberg duo up front should be the go-to for Herman in this game against Cuba?
Yeah, I'd like to see the Schaffelberg duo because, or at least I'd like to see Schaffelberg because, again, I think his speed would destabilize defenders a bit more because, especially against Guatemala, right? Like, it felt like they got too comfortable at the back because it was almost like, like Cavallini just wants to get into 50-50s, bet. Like, we'll do that. Like, we're fine with that. Where it's like, at least Schaffelberg, he brings you something different. Like, again, with defenders, it's something where it's small, but just the act when it's Cavallini, you're getting into robust physical duels. It's going to be a long game. You're not going to get on the end of all of them again. Like think of that assist he nearly had to Hoylett. But with a guy like Schaffelberg, what he does is he starts making defenders go like this, right? He makes like, oh shoot, like who's this guy who just kind of jetted past me? Like you're forced to turn your head. You're forced to keep your head on a swivel. Next thing you turn just a half second, you look up, all of a sudden that opened up a space. Cavallini is about to line up a shot in his left foot, right? Whereas when you're trying to get into these duels, the game stays in front of you. It all gets a bit predictable for Canada. So I just purely want Schaffelberg at this point, because we've seen it for Nashville. Like, he does so good at that, and that's like so underrated. Like, Hani Mukhtar loves it, right? Like, defenders are always looking, oh shoot, where's Schaffelberg? You look up, you left Hani Mukhtar in a half a yard of space, and you know what he'll do to you. And I don't know who that player will be for Canada, right? Like, could it be Cavallini? Will it be Brim? Hoylett certainly has that potential, but we'll obviously see him playing a little deeper. If he's not injured, by the way, it sounds like he has a bit of a hamstring knock. So if that ends up being the case, I guess Osorio slots in. You could throw Nelson up front as an option. But I just think Schaffelberg brings a bit of that instability up front that we haven't seen, where it's just been far too predictable from the forwards. And Cuba might, try to limit that and play deeper, but still just the act of always having to think someone like that will open up space for a second striker. And if that's Cavallini, if that's Brim, if that's Russell Rowe, I think they'd all benefit from it. I
agree. And let's not kid ourselves, it will be Osorio. But looking at the front too, I mean, Schaffelberg plays, I'm going to address this comment here. Schaffelberg doesn't have the quality. I think sometimes the issue with Schaffelberg is he can't do it on a consistent basis. He finds his way in good form. He breaks into the Nashville side, in a very good Nashville side. They play the 4-1-2-1-2, and he plays up. He's played it in his best position in my eyes, when he kind of floats in that dual striker role. So the fact that we're playing with two strikers, like Alex is mentioning, can create space, and it's just a whole other attribute that's so different than the way Hoylett is going to play. Cavallini and Hoylett are not working. And let's not pretend that they are, but whether it's Osorio or Hoylett, hopefully creating opportunities a little bit below them, I'm hoping that it could be Hoylett, because I think he could do that. Then you have a different dynamic up front, and Schaffelberg has played this role before. And if you look at him, he can create space and he can finish. Like, Hani Mukhtar can finish. He had a bad touch in a poor finish last night, but he can finish. If you've seen some of the goals he's scored this season, he makes the proper run. He hits it first time. He hits it well, and he can find the back of the net. And I think just having that little pace, that little ability to just kind of play off of Cavallini, can create something that Hoylett and Cavallini just simply aren't doing. Like, this, to me, Alex, I think we built a pretty good starting 11 that is actually realistic and could happen and could potentially play to the strengths of some of these players.
Yeah, and I think that's the goal at this point, right? I mean, again, also, to be fair, it is, what I like about it is there's some newer faces in there, right? We get to see more of a Bombito outside, Laturi in that 6, build that Ahmed, Larea, Bombito triangle, see a little bit more Schaffelberg, because look, Schaffelberg, he's had some good pockets of form, but you saw like 5 minutes of him in 2021, and then finally gets a call now, and you're playing him at wingback, a position he really hasn't played, right? Like, get these guys in some familiar positions, see what they can do, and I guess we'll see if Herdman will do that.
I know, and when I'm just looking at it right now, and chat, let me know, rate this out of 10. Rate this 11 out of 10. All right, let us know. I'm going to go through it very quickly for you guys. Give us a rating out of 10 of what you, I guess, would like to see, / how you think that they go together. From what I'm expecting, I'm going to give it a 9, because I really like it. Yes, we're not going all out with the kids. We got a 6.9 in there. Nice. But the thing I like about it is that I think it complements, each player kind of complements each other. Borjan's in net is what it is. It's Borjan's tournament. The back 3, you've now eliminated the pace issue by putting McGraw in the middle. It could be Victoria. I don't even really care. That's fine. Then you got the athleticism of Bombito, Kennedy. They have the pace. They have the athletic ability to kind of cover that speed. And in transition, when you know that Miller and Larea are going up the pitch, you have that speed to cover. And I think that's going to be very important. You have Larea, one of the best players in the tournament. And like Alex mentioned, that triangle that is working. Then you have Miller on the outside, who's, he's trying things. Maybe that final ball can come off. Maybe he scores a worldie. We don't know. And maybe he'll get a little more confidence playing against Cuba. Then you have an actual 6 who's been playing, who deserves an opportunity, and it can add some coverage to that back 3. You have Ahmed, who's been our player of the tournament, along with probably the Larea, Osorio or Hoylett, whichever one. Put a creative player in the 10. You have and then you have Schaffelberg and Cavallini up front. Cavallini, I think he's going to get the chance. He is the guy who's right now probably expected to score goals, but now you have a completely different profile playing alongside him that can maybe, like the things you don't see, can create opportunities for him, create space, and get some players out of the way. So all things considered, I think it's realistic. I think that there's a chance, Alex, maybe that Herman goes with something similar.
You tell me there's a chance?
There's a chance. You tell me there's a chance. I don't know. What do you make of it when you look at the overall picture? Because I like it, and I think that it could create something a little bit different and maybe give us some confidence going up against a Cuba side that has nothing to play for.
Yeah, I'd want to see just adjustments based on what we saw, right? I think it was very clear what the first game brought us. So I think it was just frustrating that by the second half, it was the exact same 11 ran back. It was like, okay, then what did we learn here? I think I just want to see tweaks based on what we saw, right? Like, Larrea's been really great, so more Larrea. Almond's been great. Let's see more Almond. Bombito had a very good 45 on the outside of a back three. Keep him there. McGraw, he had 10 good minutes in the middle of a back three when Vittoria came off, and then spent most of the time kind of struggling on the right. Let's see him in the middle then. See if that was just 10 minutes of maybe the game kind of quieting down, or is that maybe an indication of what he can do? Kennedy versus Miller, right? Miller's on a yellow. Purely just, save him for a quarterfinal and see what Kennedy has. And if Kennedy plays great, then that's a good headache. At the number 6, just see Laturi, see what he can do. Hoylett's looked Canada's liveliest player on the ball. Get Schaffelberg's speed. Just, try to get a partner for Cavalier. Like, there's a lot there that we'll hope that they can kind of all complement each other. So, it'll remain to be seen, right? How much did Canada learn from these first 2 games? Because, look, I'll always say, right? Like, losing is not a bad thing. Drawing, well, etc. It's just if you learn, right? If you start to lose and you're doing the same thing over and over, and then at that point it's like, okay, what are you learning? You're learning that whatever you're doing is not working. So just take whatever didn't work and adjust and lean into that. And if that's the case, then okay, maybe those 2 draws were what Canada needed. But it's something, if you go out and kind of repeat the same patterns, you scrape by Cuba, and just to that you're gonna be like, what's the point? Just to go get battered by a US or a Jamaica. So just learn. I think that's something where it makes this a lot more digestible. Yeah, where now there's frustration. There's always going to be frustration when you lose. Like John Herdman mentioned, if you want to be a soccer country, there's going to be frustration if you lose. But in international soccer, you can't waste losses. It's not the club season where you can have a 15-20 loss season. Okay, you avoid relegation, just reset the button next year, bring in new signings. Can't bring in new signings. You have such limited time together that if you're wasting this time losing, right, it's going to build up, it's going to add up. So just learn and take that next step. And again, there's so much evidence of what has not been working. What have you learned? Okay, can we finally see it all in practice?
And the last point I'll do here is what made John Herman, I think, so special throughout qualifying is that he was able to learn. And that's the reason we topped. And yes, people in the chat, we're aware it's not a trophy, but we did top World Cup qualifying. We played 14 matches against what was the best countries in Concacaf. And John Herman, it seemed like he learned from everything. He was able to set up his team properly to go down to Mexico, to the US at home. He knew when to defend. He knew when to attack. He knew when to adjust. He played the 4-2-3-1, the 3-4-3, the 3-5-2. Like he did everything. And it just seems like we're seeing a bit of a different John Herman right now where, and I don't hate the fact that he's going with this 3-5-2 and kind of trying to create an identity around it. It just seems like there's obvious holes with the personnel. And like you said, Alex, I want John Herman to take a look at that and be like, you know what? And I don't know, maybe the starting 11 Alex and I created would go out there and bust. But it just, to me,
at least you're trying.
Yeah, at least you're trying. Like, I don't know. It just, to me, it makes so much sense out of what I think I would expect it of what John Herman's going to do and the players that I think could do something against Cuba. And there's a chance here. This Cuba team's got nothing to play for. They just got battered. There's no reason that we shouldn't go out there and pick up a W and then hopefully go on to take on and build on that performance. And like I said, there's been a lot of poor things we've seen this tournament so far in those 2 matches, but there's been some stuff there. You know what I mean? Like, it's like right on the edge of something could happen. And I'm talking about those triangles that we're seeing. I'm talking about Miller, Liam Miller trying things that just not quite there. It's just like, if it just clicks at the right time, maybe we could salvage this tournament. But like you said, Alex, it's a learning curve. They have 1 match to do it. I don't know if you want to give a prediction here on our way out, or you want to end it at that, and we'll reconvene when they play Cuba.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see about predictions. Again, this is a game Canada should win. Like, again, I'd feel something where 2-3, 4-0. We'll see. I think Guadeloupe as well putting up a 4-1 kind of gives you an idea. Again, if you're drawing Guadeloupe, if it's the team that was very similarly matched, then you should be at least trying to match that result. But yeah, look, let's just continue to learn, because again, I think that's been the frustrating part, is that we know so much about this. Like, I've watched so much of Steven Vitor in a Canadian national team shirt. I could give you a 10-page detailed scouting breakdown of what he does well and what he doesn't do well. We don't have that same data for a Moise Bombito or, some of these other players we haven't seen as much of. Victor Laturi, right? So let's just get more data points to learn from. And again, this tournament is about learning. It's about winning. And I think one cannot be done without the other. And this is Canada's time to show that they're learning.
It's a positive note to end on, guys. I really enjoy doing these streams. We will be back the day after the Cuba match to hopefully celebrate. I won't give my prediction, but I do expect, I want to see a comfortable performance. I just want to see Canada play somewhat to the level we expect, get a result, move on, adjust, and get ready for a completely different tactical battle against Jamaica or the States. So with that being said, guys, I really appreciate you guys tuning into these streams. They are a lot of fun. And hopefully next time we come together, we will be celebrating a little bit more as opposed to just, venting and going pro Laturi. So thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to drop a like on the way out, subscribe if you're new, and we will see you guys soon. Cheers, friends.